All right. So far, we have been concerned with describing and explaining the universal aspect of second language acquisition. We have seen that social factors have to do with the context of learning and an effect on how successful of an individual second language learners are, and possibly how interlanguage develops. So in this lesson, ladies and gentlemen, we will focus on the two major dimensions which contributed and influenced the learners. These dimensions are language aptitude and motivation. And along the way, we will also explore the differences in learning strategies that affect the development. Good day everyone, especially to our dearest teacher, Dr. Joylyn Macabenta. Ma'am, good day, classmates and friends. So I know last month we were hit by Super Typhoon Rai, and all of us, or mostly our houses, were totally damaged, or if some partially damaged, but general, all of us are affected with this super typhoon. But let's thank God that we are still here, kicking and doing this activity. So now let's proceed. So we are from group 5 and we are assigned to discuss individual differences in second language acquisition, which can be found in chapter 8, and instruction and second language acquisition, which can be found also in chapter 9 in the book of Rod Ellis, respectively. But before we proceed, let me ask you, what is the difference between language acquisition and language learning? Anyone? Okay, correct. That language acquisition usually refers to first language acquisition, which studies how infants acquire their mother tongue or native language, whether it is spoken language or signed language. So in contrast, second language acquisition deals with acquisition of additional languages. So in other meaning, it is our targeted language. So for example, our targeted language class is English. Since we are learning with it, we're studying on it, so it is our second language. Unlike with first language, it is our primary, since from the beginning we already know about it. So what is the example of it? It is our dialect, which is Visayan or Bisaya. So muna ito ang first language. So now, let's proceed to the main point of this topic. So what is language aptitude? Okay. Language learning aptitude refers to the prediction of how well, relative to other individuals, an individual can learn a foreign language in a given amount of time and under given conditions. As with many measures of aptitude, language learning aptitude is thought to be relatively stable once a person matures. So what is the explanation of it? Language aptitude refers to the potential that a person has for learning languages. This potential is often evaluated using formal aptitude tests, which predict the degree of success that candidate will have with a new language. Additionally, it varies also, but many include evaluation of ability to manage sounds, grammatical structures, infer rules, and memory. So, mo na itong language aptitude. So, what is the example of language aptitude, everyone? So, the modern language aptitude test evaluates language aptitude. In the classroom, language aptitude may be fixed, but there are many things teachers can do in the area of learner training to improve the learner's ability. So, these include helping learners identify their preferences for learning. For example, thinking about learning styles and then looking at how this can be developed, or developing learning autonomy by teaching learners how to study effectively. So language aptitude class have two important things. What are these? First, we have general intelligence. So what is general intelligence? Alright. General intelligence can be defined as a construct that is made up of different cognitive abilities. So for example, researchers might find that people have scored well on questions that measures vocabulary, perform better on questions related to reading comprehension. So another is when Rhoda Joy Amora is good in numbers, then it implies that she is well also in solving numerical problems. These abilities allow people to acquire language or knowledge and solve problems. So this general mental ability is what underlies specific mental skills related to areas such as spatial, numerical, what else? Mechanical, and verbal abilities. So that is general intelligence. Another one is we have distinct. So what is distinct? So we have here, according to Howard Gardner of Harvard, he identified that there are 7 distinct intelligence. So this theory class has emerged from recent cognitive research and documents that extent to which students possess different kinds of minds and therefore learn, remember, perform, and understand in a different ways. Alright? Because we as individual class, we have different cognitive or capacity in our mind on how we acquire things. So we are unique in our own way. So therefore, according to Gardner 1991, that we can perform, understand in different ways. To make it clear, class, I will give you an example. Mr. Masapol has his own way on how to memorize subject-verb agreement by counting numbers. So on the other hand, another example, Miss Kinlog memorizes her speech by waking up 3 a.m. or 3 in the morning. So as we can compare that Mr. Masapol has a way on how to memorize the subject-verb agreement by counting the numbers. And on the other hand also, Mr. Kinlog has a way also by waking up in the morning by memorizing subject-verb agreement. So in this sense, both Masapol and Kinlog have their own clearly separate and different ways on how to memorize their assigned task. No? It is clear, class, that the two subjects have different ways on how to memorize. And at the end, of course, they perform their task well, but the way on how they do it, they are different. So, having these two characteristics of language aptitude, it will fall to a natural ability for learning second languages or second language, right, class? So if we have this general intelligence, if we are well developed, well known of a lot of things, and we have this distinct, we have capability to learn, to know, we have ways on how to perform, then naturally it will fall to a natural ability in acquiring or learning second language. So always remember, class, that language aptitude lies with general intelligence and distinct and falls to natural ability for learning second language. So let's proceed to another page about language aptitude, still in language aptitude class. So theory from John Carroll. But before anything else, let's know about or who is John B. Carroll. So there are components of language aptitude by John Carroll. So John Carroll is an influential psychologist in the field of educational linguistics and developed a theory about a cluster of 4 abilities that factored into language learning aptitude separate from verbal, intelligence, and motivation. So using these 4 distinct abilities, class, which are What are the distinct abilities? The phonetic coding ability, grammatical sensitivity, rote learning ability, and inductive learning ability. So Carol developed also the MLAT, a language aptitude assessment for adults. So first components on the first column, we have phonemic coding ability, and its definition is ability to identify sounds. So it is the ability to identify sounds of a foreign language so that they can be remembered later. This ability is also seen as related ability to handle sound symbol relationships. For example, class, the sounds of CH. What is the sound of CH? Anyone? Okay, it's ch, ch, right? It's ch, ch. That is the sound of CH. In other words, we can say church, church, chocolate, champagne, champagne. In this, if the learner is familiar already with a sound, he will meet a sound like CH or ch. Then eventually, he or she will remember and can be used in correct way of pronouncing, no? If that particular learner will meet sound like ch or ch, then he or she can remember it. What? Remember it and can be used in a correct way, correct? Second is we have grammatical sensitivity. So its definition is ability to recognize the grammatical functions. So in other words, it is in a sentence, and I know grammar is very much important. If we know how to recognize grammar, its usage and function, then it is easy for us to acquire second language. Class, for instance, when we had our primary, we are taught what the role of subject, the verb, or even object, right? So along the process, when we are already familiar with its functions, it is easy for us to know what it's all about. For example, Amy plays volleyball. So, Amy is the subject or the doer of the action, which is symbolizes with the word plays, and volleyball act as object. In the next run, if we will meet like this, even if not the same words, we can still recognize where is subject, verb, and object. So always remember subject, verb, and object. So that is the function of grammatical sensitivity. Third, inductive language learning ability. So it is ability to identify patterns of correspondence and relations between form and meaning. Take note with the word form and meaning. For example, the beauty which is a form, which means a combination of qualities such as shape, color, or form that pleases the aesthetic senses, especially the sight. This explanation of beauty is the meaning. Additionally, inductive learning, also called concept learning, is a way in which AI system try to use a generalized rule to carry out observations. The data is obtained as a result of machine learning or form domain experts, where it is used to drive algorithms, often called the inductive learning algorithms, that to generate a set of classification rules, no? So always remember with the inductive language learning ability. The fourth one, or the last, we have rote learning ability. So it is the ability to form and remember association between stimuli. So rote learning is a learning process based on repetition. Examples of rote learning are memorizing basic concepts like numbers, the alphabets, or multiplication tables. For example, class, when we had our grade 6, we are taught, or we are assigned or tasked with our teacher to memorize the subject-verb agreement and Psalm 23. In this way, rote learning ability help us to remember the things that we are memorizing, because try to imagine if we always memorizing things, it will encode in our memory and forever will be remembered. Until now, even if I am in the second year college, I still remember some points about subject verb, and the Psalm 23, I still remember all the lines, all the verses from 1 to 8. So by that, the rote learning ability will help you to better know or better understand about certain things. Or high school students need to have learned the periodic table, 'di ba? We are tasked by our teachers to memorize the periodic table of elements, and copywriting students learn successful copywriting techniques through repetition. When you are a writer, there are a lot of things to remember or to study about the symbols, to for you to edit the things that are not included in the sentence. So you need to remember, read everything.
Good afternoon, Mama Kabenta. Good afternoon, classmates. I am Nina Julia Bagsarpa, and I'll be discussing the topic motivation. So when we talk about motivation literally means the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. The general desire or willingness of someone to do something. In individual differences and second language or L2 acquisition, motivation has its literal meaning but involves the attitudes and affective states that influence the degree of effort that learners make to learn a second language. There are various kinds of motivation. We have identified them. 1 is instrumental motivation, 2 is integrative motivation, 3 is resultative motivation, and the last one is intrinsic motivation. Let's tackle first the instrumental motivation. Instrumental motivation, the learners may make efforts to learn a second language or L2 for some practical or functional reasons. Examples of functional reasons are to pass an examination, to get a better job, or to get a place at university. Also, in some learning contexts, an instrumental motivation seems to be a major point to succeed in acquiring L2. It opens up educational and economic opportunities. For example, facilities or programs that open up educational and economic opportunities are likely a motivation for the learners to acquire a second language or L2. Another example is getting into university. A word that university doesn't allow learners who don't speak their native language, which is English language. This applies instrumental motivation because you will acquire a second language for you to fulfill that university language requirement. So that is instrumental motivation. It is all about doing something for some practical or functional reasons. Now, let's proceed to the second kind of motivation, which is integrative motivation. When we talk about integrative motivation, it happens because the learner is interested in people and culture represented by the target language group. This motivation serves to answer the question, why an individual is learning the language or acquiring a second language. The reason of it is particularly, learners choose to learn a specific second language because of their interest in people and the culture. Some learners have the personal affinity or attraction and liking for something for the people who speak a particular language. Especially, learners who are integratively motivated want to learn the language because they want to get to know the people who speak the targeted language he wants to learn. This integrative motivation not just talk about the interest for people represented by the target language group, but also tackles the interest in the culture associated with that language. Integratively motivated learners may have significant others, such as boyfriend or girlfriend or family members who speak the language, and heritage language learners typically have a particularly strong integrative motivation for language learning. Let me give you an example. An example like students want to become part of a speech community. This is simply learning second language because they have the affinity or desire in that particular speech community. Another understandable example is when English-speaking Canadians start to learn French. You can obviously see and assume maybe they're learning it for the interest in French people and their culture. They have the desire to interact with them and even become similar to valued member of that language community. But integrative motivation does not seem to be so important in other learning contexts, which has suggested that some learners are maybe influenced by Machiavellian motivation. Machiavellian motivation, it means the desire to learn second language in order to manipulate and overcome the people of that target language. But on the other hand, integrative motivation is still an important aspect in which using the target language for social interaction. Now let's proceed to the next one, which is the third kind of motivation, the resultative motivation. This motivation is concerned with the relationship between motivation and achievement. It has an assumption that motivation is the cause of second language achievement. However, it is possible as well that motivation is the result of learning. That is, learners who experience success in learning may become more, or in some contexts, less motivated to learn. This assists to demystify the conflicting research results. For example, students who perform well in classroom are more likely to gain confidence and to be more willing to participate. While in the process of language learning, it has the possibility that they will get motivated to learn more. Another example is when in Canada, success in learning French may intensify English-speaking learners' liking for French culture, while in California, success in learning English may bring Mexican women into circumstances where they experience or face discrimination and then reduce their appreciation of American culture. Therefore, in resultative motivation, learners will either get motivated to learn more or you can also get unmotivated depending on the consequences emerging on them. But still, resultative motivation appears as the result of the achievements received by the learners because they have English abilities. Now let's proceed for the last kind of motivation, which is intrinsic motivation. It occurs when we act without any obvious external rewards. We simply enjoy the activity or see it as an opportunity to explore, learn, and actualize our potentials. For the easier understanding, it talks about the learners that got involved in various activities for themselves, only for themselves, not because of external influences. It may not be learners' general reasons for learning a second language that are crucial in determining their motivation. So, it is fine and possible for the learners to not hold distinct attitudes, positive or negative, towards the target language group. This pertains in cases with many foreign language learners. They sometimes learn second language for satisfying one's curiosity. For example, activities that can generate such feelings when they give people a sense of meaning, like participating in volunteer. That individual is not expecting a reward or anything in return. They just participate or perform such activities to receive some intrinsic reward, such as the joy of doing a particular activity or satisfying one's curiosity. These rewards are creating positive emotions within individual. Also, the another example is acquiring a second language. This motivation relates positively to learning achievement, and perception of competence, and negatively to anxiety, not expecting to receive some extrinsic reward such as getting good grades or being praised by the teacher or to avoid punishment. So according to this view, motivation involves the arousal and maintenance of curiosity and can decrease and flow as a result of such factors as learners' particular interests and the extent to which they feel personally involved in learning activities. So that is all about intrinsic motivation. So overall, motivation is clearly a high complex phenomenon. Learners can be both integratively and instrumentally motivated at the same time. Motivation can result from learning as well as cause it. So that's all. That's all about motivation. And now let's do a recap for the various kinds of motivation. One is instrumental motivation. Number 2 is integrative motivation. Number 3 is resultative motivation. And the last one is intrinsic motivation. So that's all about motivation. And I am giving the floor to my next co-reporter, Camila Cassandra Castro. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. This is Camila Cassandra Castro, and I will be here to discuss to you about learning strategies. Learning strategies. Language aptitude and motivation, as discussed a while ago, constitutes general factors that influence the rate and level of second language acquisition. But may I ask you, how does their influence operate? One possibility is that they affect the nature and the frequency with which individual learners use learning strategies. Now, what is learning strategies? Learning strategies, or the particular approaches or techniques that learners employ to try to learn or achieve their second language. It can be behavioral or it can be mental. It can be behavioral, for example, repeating new words aloud to help them remember it for a period of time, or mental, for example, using the linguistic or situational context to infer the meaning of the word. Let's dig into behavioral a little bit deeper with another example. For example, there are circumstances when we are reading a book and then we encounter an unfamiliar word. And then, when we keep on reading it again and again and again, it can get stuck into our mind, in our thoughts, and we tend to remember it for a period of time. Mental. For example, we are reading and then we face off another unfamiliar word. We tend to read the following context to cope up with the meaning of the new word. These are all problem-oriented, that is when learners employ the learning strategies when they are faced with some problem such as to how to remember a new word. Learners are generally aware of the strategies they use, and when they are asked, they can explain what they did to try to learn something or how they acquire their second language. There are different kinds of learning strategies. Types of learning strategies are identified as cognitive strategy, metacognitive strategy, and social or affective strategies. Let's dig in first with cognitive strategy. Cognitive strategy are those that are involved in the analysis of sentences or transformation of learning materials. Example of this is the recombination or the constructing of a meaningful sentence by recombining known elements of the second language acquisition in a new way. It's like generating a new sentence from the second required language in a more innovative way. Cognitive strategy are one type of learning strategy that learners use in order to learn more successfully. These include repetition, organizing new language, summarizing meaning, guessing meaning from context, using imagery for memorization. All of these strategies involve deliberate manipulation of language to improve learning. Example: a learner remembers new words by visualizing them represented in a more memorable or ridiculous situation. This makes it easier and faster to recall these words. In the classroom, for example, activities which can be described as cognitive strategies include making mind maps, visualization, association, mnemonics, using clues in reading comprehension, underlining keywords, scanning and self-testing, and monitoring. Next, let's dig deeper into metacognitive strategies. Metacognitive strategies are those involved in planning, monitoring, and evaluating learning. An example of this is selective attention, where the learner makes a conscious decision to attend to particular aspects of the input. Metacognitive strategy, from the word metacognition. Metacognition is the ability to think about your own thinking. Meta means beyond and cognition means thinking. So, metacognitive strategies involve reflecting on and regulating how you think. Having this skill is essential for improving your own productivity and effectiveness at school or at work. When we apply metacognitive strategies, we become better learners. We can control not only our thoughts but also our actions much more effectively. Examples of metacognitive strategy. Examples of implementing metacognitive strategies is when learning is when we practice self-questioning, meditation, or reflection. Let's proceed to social or affective strategies. Social or affective strategies concern the ways in which learners choose to interact with other speakers. An example of this is questioning for clarification. When we are confused about something or we need further info to be able to understand the topic, we have this urge to automatically ask someone for further clarification or explanation or an example perhaps to understand the topic deeper. Like how I am doing right now, giving examples to you so that you may understand deeper the topic. Somehow, we all deserve an explanation, right? Language is an element of social behavior and the predominant one for communication between people. Social strategies can help learners to achieve more effective language learning and obtain a better understanding of different cultures. People's feelings, attitudes, anxieties, and motivation have an impact on the progress of language learning and performance. Indeed, using effective strategies can help us to control these feelings. For example, in the classroom, the teacher can play an active role in developing and exploiting effective strategies by building a generally positive atmosphere in the class. This can happen by encouraging and counseling learners, by helping them identify achievable aims and work towards autonomous learning through personalizing activities and through pair and group work. Why strategies are important? Stated that strategies are especially important for language learning because they are tools for active, self-directive involvement, which is essential for developing communicative competence. Appropriate language learning strategies result in improved proficiency and greater self-confidence. Strategies can also help students begin to understand the process of learning. Strategies help students to bypass their areas of weakness and to perform at the level at which they are capable. Strategies promote flexible thinking and teach students the importance of shifting their approaches to different tasks. For example, the social or affective strategies. When we are having a hard time coping up with the lesson, as students or as learners, we always reach out to our teachers or to someone who can give us further clarification so that our minds could go at peace. This is why learning strategies are entirely crucial for all of us. It will help us to surpass difficulties in learning and help us grow into more knowledgeable and capable individuals. So, thank you for listening to me, and I hope you have a great day. And I hope you will use these learnings for future purposes, and I hope you will share this to anyone you know in order for them to help feed their knowledge as well. Thank you.
Chapter 9, Instruction and L2 Acquisition. Good day everyone, this is Maria Jessa Arboyes bringing up the topic for form-focused instruction. Language pedagogy has emphasized form-focused instruction. This brief review of the pedagogical background suggests that there are two key questions. First, does form-focused instruction work learners learn what they have been taught, and assuming a positive answer. Second, what kind of form-focused instruction works best? Form-focused instruction, the grammar translation method, and to teach learners audiolingual method both involves attempts, differing only in how this is to be accomplished. More recently, however, language pedagogy has emphasized the need to provide learners with real communicative experiences. Now let's move forward. Does form-focused instruction work? One way in which we might investigate whether formal instruction has any effect on interlanguage is to compare the development of untutored and tutored learners. In the study of Teresa Pica, suggesting that the instruction had no effect on the processing strategies involved in the acquisition of this word order rules. This claim can be tested by investigating whether instruction has any effect in the sequence of acquisition of particular grammar structures. Another way of testing the claim is by designing instructional experiments to see if teaching a particular structure results in its acquisition. Now, moving on forward, does form-focused instruction work? In the manifesting of Manfred Peinemann shows that form-focused instruction can have an effect on acquisition. This led to propose the teachability hypothesis, which predicts that instruction can only promote language acquisition if the interlanguage is close to the point, when the structure to be taught is acquired in the natural setting. Finally, we need to consider exactly what we mean by acquisition when we talk about the effects of instruction. This is a crucial issue. It is one thing for instruction to have an effect on learners' ability to manipulate structures consciously, and quite another for it to affect their ability to use structures with ease and accuracy in fluent communication. So what kind of form-focused instruction works best? Given that instruction can work, it becomes important to discover whether some kinds of instruction work better than others. To illustrate this, we will consider a number of options in form-focused instruction. Number 1. The first concerns the distinction between input-based and a production-based practice. A study carried out by Vil van Patten and Teresa Cadierno was signed to investigate this. It suggests that form-focused instruction that emphasizes input processing may be very effective. It also supports theories of L2 acquisition that emphasize the role of conscious noticing in input. Input-based instruction may work because it induces noticing in learners. The second one, input-based and production-based instruction. The second issue concerns consciousness raising. This term refers to attempts to make learners aware of the existence of specific linguistic features in the target language. One way is to supply the learner with positive evidence. An alternative approach is to provide negative evidence. The task of piecing out how the various instructional options affect the acquisition of grammatical structures has only just begun. The promise of such studies is that they can make a contribution to both language pedagogy by helping to make teaching more efficient, and to SLA by providing a means of testing theories of acquisition.
Good day, everyone. Good day, Mama Kabenta. So I am Aini Starhill, a student BS in English 2. So for today, we will continue in discussing the learner instruction matching under the chapter 9, which is the instruction and the L2 acquisition. So we are focusing in this chapter about the instruction and the second language acquisition. So let me ask you if you have already understand the input-based instruction and the production-based instruction from the previous topic. It's because it is somehow related to our topic, which is the learner instruction matching. Okay, so what can you understand the learner instruction matching? I think it's very understandable that the learner instruction matching involve the learner preferences with regards to the instruction. Now, the teachers will consider the learners if they are preferred or they are more into the strategies that they are using. Okay, so it's because one of the difficulties of each institution is that the appropriate linking of the student learning preferences with faculty instructional philosophies, because sometimes teachers didn't consider the preferences of the students, so it may affect on the learning outcomes. So what will happen if the learning preferences and the teaching strategies of the teachers will match? So congruence between learner preferences is an essential way. Why? It's because if the learning preferences and the teaching strategies match, it can have a powerful impact on the learner or instruction satisfaction. It's because if the teacher teaches the students will access it thoroughly and they can apply it on their own, potentially raising completion and graduation rate. So that's the benefit, or that's the advantage of the learning preferences and the teaching strategies matching. So in contrast, if the teaching strategies of the teacher didn't match the learning preferences, there might happen the incompatibility between the learning preferences or the learning styles of the students and the teaching preferences of the teachers. So the students will have boredom or discouragement, poor performance, low motivation, shattered self-esteem. So that's major of the results of not matching the learning preferences. So in every classroom, so there's the first thing here is okay, first, the same instructional option is not equally effective for all L2 learners. So in every classroom, we can definitely say that we have diverse learning strategies of the students to learn certain topics or for the second language acquisition. So they have different ways or process on learning the second language. So students learn the second language in varied ways. So some are being developed because of input-based instruction. Now, Now, as I've said, input-based instruction and the production-based instruction plays important role upon understanding the learner instruction matching. For the input-based instruction, we have that the teachers is the one who will input information, or the one who teaches information. Whereas the production-based instruction, the students or the learners are the one who will realize on their own on how to learn the second language. So that's it. So basically, they have unique styles in attaining the goal, which is to learn the second language. Probably most of us, our second language is the English. Like say for example, in learning the English language, we have 4 types of learning that language. We have visual, auditory, reading or writing, or kinesthetic. So therefore, each individual has its own traits that may work for them. Like they are visual aspect may work on them, but let me emphasize this, it will not work for everyone. So some are good in visual, some also are good in auditory, some are on kinesthetic or writing, something like that. So as a teachers, we must consider that not all learners have diverse learning styles, and some aspect may work on them, but others may not effective for them. So something like that. Next, we have learning style and language aptitudes. So of course, learning style is very understandable. Learning style, it refers to the preferences of the students to learn a specific topic, or like second language. So they have their own learning style. And the language aptitude, for the aptitude, it refers to the potential a person has. So when they say language aptitude, it refers to the person's capabilities to learn the language. So language aptitudes test determine as our capabilities of the language or our vocabulary, like for the grammatical sensitivity and analytical. And there's it predicts our it predicts learners' ability to the language. Why? It's because there are some researchers who propose ways or processes on how to test or on how to predict the learner's ability when it comes to language. We have that MLAT, or the Modern Language Aptitude Test, in which it determines the grammatical sensitivity and analytical. So it involves grammatical functions or analytic thinking, something like that. And we have also the Canal F test and LLME. And to go further, or to understand more about that, you can visit on YouTube. There's many information about that. And through this, the test and different approach to determine the capabilities of the learners to learn the language. Like, let me give you an instance. Sheila was being tested for the grammatical ability. So, of course, he or she was being tested that is connected to grammatical, so that we can determine the strengths and weaknesses, or the levels of her grammatical capabilities. Or through this, we can address that weakness and turn that weakness into strength. So something like that. That's the rule of the language capabilities. Language aptitude rather. Next is language aptitude. Learners vary in particular types of ability they are strong in. So as I've said, some learners are good in segmenting sounds in the speech they hear, but less effective in identifying the grammatical function of the words in a sentence, and other learners is opposite. Like, I want to share you that I have a colleague before in the SAA, the Student Catholic Action, in which we are facilitating some aspirants in our organization. So I have an organization before, which is to, our purpose is to disseminate still the word of Jesus or the word of God, something like that. And I can, on my observation to her, she is good in verbal and in oral speaking. She has that confidence. She has that multiple backup words, or she has an unlimited words come out on her mouth. But by the time that we are tasked to do written activity, I can say that she is not that good, because we can say that there's a spelling or grammatical error, something like that. So we can it only implies that some are good on other aspect and they are weak on the other aspect, something like that. And the same with the learning the second language. Some are good and some are very effective for them for the visual, and some are reading or writing, something like that. Okay. Next, we have learners with different kind of ability may be able to achieve similar levels of success. So, providing that the type of instruction enables them to maximize their strengths, account when investigating the effects of instruction. So, again, as I've said, learners have diverse learning styles, and they have undergo different process. All learners have undergo different processes or different ways in attaining, but they have attained the one goal, which is the second language acquisition. They acquired the second language, like say for example for the English, the second language is the English. So we have 10 students, and those 10 students have different levels or have different ways, processes in understanding or attaining the goal, which is to learn the English language, something like that. And again, the input-based instruction, according to the proponents of that research, they have said that the input-based instruction works better overall. So the undergo observations and how does it works better. But let me emphasize again this, that production-based instruction, input-based instruction, even if it works better according to the researchers, it doesn't applicable to all types of learner. Because input-based instruction works better overall than production-based instruction, but it does not follow that this will be true to all types of learning. And definitely, it is really true that it will not be applicable to all types of learners. Next, we have, again, if the instruction match the learner, they will become an efficient learner. Otherwise, if not, oh no, learners may have difficulties in learning the second language. Okay, so if it doesn't match their preferences, then they have difficulties that may arise in learning the second language. Okay, so therefore, teachers should consider the learner's preference with regards to teaching the second language. So as the teachers, we must consider that it will match their or fit their preferences, so that we can thoroughly teach them, and the information that we have been shared to them will be easily accessed. Then, teachers' methods of instruction must suit to the learner preference. So it's likely related. And matching learner style will motivate students. Again, it will motivate students, help them to focus on the instruction. So if they are into it, then they will give their attention to the instruction. And finally, they receive the second language process and apply it pedagogically. If they really understand the topics that had been introduced to them, then they can use it in their own way or in the future. It's because they fully understand it. So that's it. In the near future, if we will become teachers, we should consider the methods that we will use to match the students' preference, because it will help them to learn effectively. So that's for the the learner instruction matching. I hope that you have some things that you have learned upon watching this video. So I am looking forward for if you have questions about the topic, and if not, I will give the floor to my co-reporter, which talks about the strategy training. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Bye bye, God bless.
Good day, everyone. So, for my report, I will be talking about the third branch in the chapter 9 of the Rod Ellis book, which is the instruction and second language acquisition. So, the third branch is called the strategy training. In this branch, it aims to answer the question, does it help to teach learners how to use the learning strategies employed by good language learners? Teaching learners specific grammatical structures constitutes an attempt to intervene directly in interlanguage development. So, for example, if I teach my students the specific grammatical structure of French language, for example, it means that I am intervening directly in his or her interlanguage development. Whereas an alternative approach is to intervene more indirectly by identifying strategies that are likely to promote acquisition and providing training in them. So it is advised that we should use alternative approach. We should provide strategies that will promote acquisition for them and training for them. That's why this branch is called the strategy training. Most of the research on strategy training has focused on vocabulary learning. So vocabulary learning, which means more on meanings of words. However, results have been rather mixed. Also, training students to use strategies that involve different ways of making associations involving target words has generally proved successful. So, there is a training for students that involves making associations of words. So, that strategy training has been proved successful. So, this association of words, we have an example for that. An example for this word association is the keyword method. So what is this keyword method? It requires learners to form two kinds of associations by, first, learners associate the target word with a word which is similar to a first language word. So the target word of that learner, he or she will associate it to a similar word to his or her first language. Example: the Japanese word Ohio, meaning morning, might be associated with Ohio, a state in United States. So this is what meant by the first kind of association in the keyword method, which states that learners associate the target word with a word which is the same or similar to a first language word. So for example, I am the second language learner. My first language is English and I am learning Japanese. And when I hear the word Ohio, which means morning in Japanese, I can associate it with Ohio, a state in USA, because Ohio is also a word in my first language, which means a state in USA. Another example is, for example, I am learning French and my first language is English. When I hear the word chérie, chérie in French means darling. I can associate it with a cherry, which is a fruit in my first language. The second kind of association in the keyword method is the first language word is linked to a mental image that incorporates the meaning of the target word. In the first kind of word association, the learners associate the target word with a word which is similar to the first language word. Whereas in the second kind of word association, the first language word is linked to a mental image. Example: the learner thinks of a very cold morning winter in Ohio. So, since Ohio in Japanese means morning, and Ohio in the first language of the learner is a state in USA, a place, that is why the learner associate it to a mental image, which is a very cold morning winter in Ohio. So, let's go back to the French word, the cherry. Cherry in French, I repeat, cherry is a French word which means darling in English. And cherry in my first language, in English, is a fruit. So I can associate it to a mental image wherein I think of my darling or my lover eating a cherry fruit. These associations, the keyword method for example, have been shown to promote both retention of and access to the target word. However, remember that other studies have been less convincing in demonstrating the effectiveness of strategy training. So the idea of strategy training is attractive because it provides a way of helping learners to become autonomous. So what do you mean autonomous? It means enabling them to take responsibility for their own learning. However, the main problem is that not enough is known about which strategies and which combinations of strategies work best for second language acquisition. So, in other words, strategy training is helpful or attractive, but it also has disadvantage because not enough knowledge is known about those strategies and combinations, about what's work best for the second language acquisition. So that's all for my report. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you learned something.
Good day everyone, I am John Mark Tagobasi Kahig and I'll be reporting with you the summary of Chapter 9, which is the instruction and second language acquisition. Okay, so throughout the discussion, I hope we've got an answer of the following. Did learners learn the structures they were taught? Did learners learn better if the kind of instruction they received matches their preferred ways of learning a second language? And lastly, did it help to teach learners how to use learning strategies employed by good language learners? So again, there are three branches of what impact teaching has on second language learning. So first, we have form focused instruction, or the FFI. It refers to any pedagogical practice aimed at drawing learners' attention to language form. These includes comparison between the benefits of focus on form versus focus on forms, and implicit versus implicit attention to language. The second one is the learner instructional matching. It is a student's prior knowledge The difficulty of the learning task and the pace of instruction differ, and therefore instruction must be tailored to the individual student to generate an instructional match. And lastly, we have the strategy training. It refers to the training offered to learners to facilitate their use of appropriate strategies while handling the skills-based task. So to sum up everything, so we've examined that it is possible to teach a second language, as well as seen that direct instructions can help in a number of ways. It can lead to enhanced accuracy, it can help learners progress through developmental stages more rapidly, and it can destabilize interlanguage grammars that have fossilized. So I guess that ends our report. So I hope everyone got some learnings, and that's it. So keep safe and may God bless us all.